Many Americans are not happy with their salaries, but 79% said this number would satisfy them. So, what's your number? My name's Jake Nuno. Welcome to the Money Series, a show where my co host and I, Kirk, talk about all things money from psychology to the meaning of money. Next up on the show, I'm going to bring Kirk on and we're going to talk about what is that magic number to bring satisfaction with your own income.
From the streets of San Antonio straight to your wallet, it's Jake's 2 cents on Jake of All Trades.
All right, welcome back. So who's happy with their money, with their income? So Jake is happy with his income. Today we're going to be talking about happiness and income, which is a really difficult subject, but we wanted to get into money a little bit more. What is money? I mean, we talk about it a lot, but I think there's a lot of confusion about what money is. I mean, there's even theories that money isn't real, that it's like, it's all an illusion. It's fiat. I mean, there's just so much confusion about this thing, but we know it's real in the sense that when I have $100 in a cash and I go to a restaurant, I can eat a steak. So it is real, and so there's something. And one of the interesting things that we wanted to talk about today to kind of get into this money series is an article we found. This is a common article, and this one is in Yahoo. Many Americans are not happy with their salaries, but 79% said this number would satisfy them. So this is just a broad blanket survey. It's not scientific, but just a lot of people said that a certain number would satisfy them. And I thought that was interesting. We thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because it's actually that's a significant amount of people, 79%. So a significant majority. The other thing that was interesting with this article is that they also asked about satisfaction outside of income. So are you happy with your work, happy with the boss, happy with the environment? And surprisingly, the majority of Americans were happy with all of those things. So 82% were satisfied with the work that they do, 78% satisfied with the company that they work for, and 73% satisfied with the boss or the manager. So, but the salary was 58%. So there's a huge drop in the amount of income. So, and I wonder too, obviously we've experienced rampant inflation over the last 12 to 18 months. That plays a big part in this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's inflation, and but I also think there's more than just inflation, right? There's also stuff that we'll talk about in the future about the wanting things, right? Yeah. And the disparity between the life you might envision and the life you can afford. And I think that's part of, and not being satisfied with what you enjoy now, while still being ambitious. Like, what's the level? I'm a big believer in ambition, but there's also a disparity of, you're not able to make $2.5 million a year. So you're not going to be doing a lot of the things a person who can actually generate a couple $1 million a year can do. And in terms of finances. And that's, you cannot just get on a private plane and have dinner in Paris whenever you want, right? Like, that's something that multimillionaires can do, right? You can go on a vacation, but you can't spend your life on vacation, where it's like you're working on the road. Although, those types of lifestyles are possible though these days, actually.
Yeah.
But that's part of, I think, the complicating thing that goes in here is there's inflation. So if you have a standard American lifestyle, which I think is still a thing, buying a home, having a family, the expenses that go into that, saving for college, that's still a pretty dominant part of American money and what we do with our money. But there's still an element of, this desire thing that I think happens, and also inflation as well. So I think it's inflation desire. I'll put it that way.
That's a good way to define it. And I also would add in there, I think there's a perception now that a 6-figure salary used to equate to that desire that you sort of are describing, right? Like in 10, 15 years ago, if you were thinking like getting out of college, I'm going to make six figures, even low six figures, that equates to like the life, right? Because that's an
Yeah.
elevated level of income. And now more and more new entry level jobs are coming out with salaries at like $80,000, $90,000, right? And so if you are somebody who's been in the workforce for 15 years and you've just, crested that six-figure threshold, mentally, you probably don't feel as satisfied because the difference between you and somebody just entering the workforce is not as great as it was before from an income perspective. So it's also probably psychologically demeaning on the work that you've done and all the progress you've made if you've just crept into the six-figure threshold and now it's like, well, six figures in some cities is nothing.
Yeah, and it's difficult also because of so much information available in terms of what people are making, right?
Definitely.
So you can, I don't want to get into this too much, but I know what people in my exact same position in, not with you, but like in a nonprofit fund, development role, what they actually make. And it's actually more than I make by quite a bit. And so it's like, it's a complicated thing now because you have to wrap your head around things. So like, for instance, there are other factors that Jake was mentioning earlier that I think you should consider that are values to you other than money. This is another way to think about this, right? So it says 82% of Americans are satisfied with the work that they do. So I know if I were to go into for-profit world again, in a job, I would definitely make more money than I make now with my nonprofit job, right? But I don't think I would be happier there.
Yeah.
I don't think unless the money was like 3 or 4 times more, I don't think that I would make, I don't think the little bit extra that I would probably make would make me that much more enjoyable. And I think what I'm saying is like the compensation of, let's give you another example that's older, so it's not so, relevant to what's happening to me right now. Is like, I used to work at this private school, and you would think private schools pay more than public. Sometimes they do, but often they don't. Yeah. And so I actually was paid in Southern California. It was in Irvine, California, the place. I lived in Laguna Hills, and they paid $36,000 for a full-time teacher, new teacher. And I was like, whoa. Now this was 2010, but still.
Okay. So almost 15 years ago.
Yeah, like 2011. So, there's been inflation that has caused that, they probably would do like 43 now or something. I don't know, but not that much.
That's still not,
different.
Yeah. I mean, that's still not enough.
Yeah.
To live on.
I knew that like public school teachers made a minimum like starting of like 55 to 60 in the same area that I lived in. Right. And now the difference was, the trade-off for me was there was a lot of flexibility in the job. They essentially said, here's your class times. You come in and you have to at least do that, and here's a couple things, but you don't have to like be there from 7 to, when everybody leaves. You can get there when your teaching in first class was actually, for me, was at 10 a.m. Right. They also let me develop the curriculum and have full reign on the curriculum. So for me as a creative, that was really like motivating, and I loved that part of it. Right. And so there are other compensations that made it worthwhile. It's the same thing with what's happening with me now. Is there's certain kinds of flexibility. There's certain things I'm able to build on the side and with them that I love, that, I also think will have long range monetary value to me as well.
Right. Yeah. Which brings in, so let's talk about what the magic number is in this article.
Okay.
And then we'll maybe say our own perspective of what that magic number is.
I want to know your number. Do you have a number?
I have a number.
Wait. So everybody, before we say this number, I want you to think about what your number would be. Right? Like, so this is what these guys said in this article, but you might have a different number. When I was younger, my number to be a fiction writer, I'll tell you this now, so before was $80,000 after taxes.
Okay.
So I thought, so like basically 100. Yeah. So I thought, like, if I could generate that through writing, I would be happy. Okay. So did you have a number when you were a kid or when you were younger?
I guess it was probably about 100 because my mindset was always the 6-figure thing,
Yeah,
right?
I think
So
that's it.
that was just like, and I think that's probably pretty common. Like I knew as a kid what my family made and it was nowhere near that. And then I always perceived that other friends I had who were in better financial situations, that their parents probably made 6 figures. So it was like six
Yep.
figures was the number, you know?
6 figures is the magic number but that's not the number
That's
necessarily.
not the number.
So let's hear this number now. The
So
magic
this number here is $125,000 in a salary.
One salary, yeah.
One salary, $125,000. Because the other interesting thing with this is like, if you quantify benefits on top of that,
Yeah.
you could be a lot higher, right? So like at our
Yeah.
firm, we pay for health insurance. So that's
Yes.
probably, another $10,000 or $12,000 a year on top
Yeah.
of that. We have unlimited vacation. So you can't really quantify that. But this is specifically, there's a psychological effect to this is my pay, my income.
Yeah.
125,000.
And that's what I was trying to say earlier about the different values that you might have.
Yeah.
So, you might want to consider a lower paying job that allows you to have a side income of something you really love. Like maybe the job has more flexibility, you're good at it, it does make money, but you're passionate about, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons. And so you want to try to create a team and you want to make money that way somehow. You can
Right.
do it. And so there's just like a whole variety of things you can think about versus the train of thought that I'm just going to focus on making more and more and more money in this one salaried career position. And I'm someone who's very pro money, but my point is have a focus on generating what you can do. So as an example, I hit that number, definitely not with my nonprofit job though, right? So my nonprofit job is
you're there. So you're there.
I'm pretty much at 125, maybe a little more at this point. It's hard to say. That's because I have the main job. I have my work that I do with Jake Nuno, and I have Troubadour Magazine. I have Literary Canon Club, and then I have a roommate, and I have little things that make money from stuff I have online sometimes. So I have 5-6 streams of income, and that puts me at about 125, maybe a little more a year. Now the challenge is for me is it's not salary, which has good pros and cons. It's like one of the pros is that I am able to write off a lot of stuff. Like I bought a whole bunch of new equipment. I'm buying camcorders and lights and microphones. And so next year during tax season, I'm going to have Jake. I'm going to send him a list of all this stuff again. And I'm going to be like, oh yeah, but I bought this too. So let's put that. No, I'm just kidding, Mr. IRS man. But all these types of, commodities.
But that's the benefit you get, right? For taking the risk of having the downside of losing that income easier than you can when you have a salaried.
So my view is so my view is different. My view is that the salary position is more at risk than the other income.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think it's true. Well, I mean, for one, if you look at the number of people who get laid off and how often, I think I don't think it's true. Like we live in the 1950s where you work at a job, you work there for 35 years, you retire and get the gold watch and go. I just don't think that's true anymore. So I don't think that salary is really more, what's the word? Stable. That's what people think it is because they have that coming in. And it is stable in the sense that like, while you have it, it's consistent. So if you look at it like a chart, like a spectrum, yes, it has this consistency, but then once you don't have it, it's completely gone and you have and that to me is where it's that steep fall off that happens to a lot of us that I try to protect myself against by having multiple streams of income and control. So if I were to lose my main salary position, I would increase all these other things that I have coming in
Right.
and
Right.
try to figure out other ways to increase that. Now, it may not replace it and I may be at a lower level for a long time, but the point is that it's not like, I'm going like this, things are great, and then I'm in the sewer, I'm going to jump out of a building. I'm serious though. I mean, I don't mean it as a joke. I know but it's like, that's what happens a lot. They put so much why do divorces happen? Number one reason.
Finances.
And particularly, I think a dramatic change in your finances.
Right. Yeah.
So you were making $350,000 a year at Twitter, and then you lost all that income.
Yeah.
Because Twitter fired you and they became X, and who knows what's going on over there. So right. So that type, that I'm not against salary positions. I'm against not having control over your life.
Right. Which makes, so then the question to pose to you would be, so if you had $125,000 salary, but none of your side gigs, you would not be satisfied.
Yeah, I think I would not be sad. I think I'd be nervous. I mean, the only exception would be, so there would be exceptions to this. So let's take a look at you for a second, because we always look at me. So let's say somehow you did lose your position.
Mm-hmm.
Like you split with your for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
He kicked you out.
Yeah.
You wanted to do your own thing.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
What would you do? What would be the first thing you did if, let's say it happened suddenly and you weren't expecting it? What would be the first thing Jake Nuno would do?
So just for the listeners, this
tomorrow
would mean that right now I have a firm with another advisor partner. And so as a firm, there's a salary component that I get. And so what Kirk is saying is if I lost that tomorrow.
But you'd also lose all the clients you have there.
Partner. Yeah.
You?
Yes.
Yeah. So if tomorrow you get kicked out, what do you do?
Number one, I go on vacation for 3 days to clear my head.
Okay. I like that. In your nice pool, or you go to Mexico or something?
Just take a minute.
Yeah.
Collect myself. Right. And then I think the second thing I would do would be there's a startup in kind of that world, in the financial planning world, called the XY Planning Network. And you can affiliate yourself with the XY Planning Network, which basically gives you like a back office support system for a very low entry cost. So you can start a financial planning firm, right? And then I would have to do my least favorite thing in the world, which was fill my calendar with prospective client appointments and start, cold calling and doing all the things that I absolutely hate doing. But that would be my only other, means of rebuilding a revenue stream, because that's what my knowledge, that's what my skill set is. That's what I have. My designations and my licenses are all financial related. So it wouldn't make sense to apply for, a salaried position, because it's not very common that someone in my role could move to another firm without starting all over and taking a substantial pay cut and a substantial cut in responsibility and ability to advise. Right. So that's probably what I would do.
No, that makes sense. So you've achieved a certain level of autonomy. That goes and salary. So you have the autonomy and the salary, and that's what you enjoy now. And so you'd be willing to start from scratch on your own to achieve that autonomy,
right?
And to maintain that autonomy, which you may not get somewhere else. And then I assume at some point you may even be able to merge with somebody else as a partner.
Yeah,
and that's something you can, create a firm again at a higher level, and then you could kind of put your resources together, get an office and all that. So the reason I asked that, my thinking is just that's very unlikely. Right. I don't think that's something that you have to worry about. I don't think it's really something I have to worry that much about, but it's a good exercise. It's a good thing to think about your relationship with money in relation to your salary, because, and really how much money you have coming in. So, and I'm sure as a financial advisor, you also have certain financial things you would do to kind of get ready for that. Like if that type of thing happened. in terms
Like
of like
cutting
starting this new
back
thing.
or
Yeah, like cutting
oh,
back,
mhm.
like because it's going to take a while. So you would do all the
Yeah.
numbers and crunch those numbers. Things like
Yeah,
that.
and like I'd probably have to take on some debt to invest in equipment, right? Because I mean, I don't need a lot of equipment for the work that I do, but there's going to have to be some investment of additional money to get it started,
Yeah.
and so that would be a very challenging thing. But I think it's an interesting because we didn't pre-plan this, so I think that was an interesting question and exercise to go through. Because had you asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have said I would go find another firm
Mm-hmm.
that's existing, and I would have started as like an entry level support staff person and taken a
Yep.
75% pay cut and started there all over again.
Yeah. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about like what I was making at my private school in the past versus right now I'm making, just over like 125 a year technically, right? Is the point of this article and what I think I got out of this article and the 82% of Americans are satisfied with their work, 78 with blah blah blah, but only 58% stating they're satisfied with their income is that's not even that relevant. The relevance is how much does each individual understand their relationship to money, their productive career, and their life, and their other values in their life. And how do they organize that? And how do they organize that in such a way that they are, what did you call it? Like the black swan events in the economics,
Right.
but also in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like something you don't expect. And I think, for a lot of people, getting fired is something they don't, although you could see the signs coming. Like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you saw this, but it hasn't even been in the news much, but Dell let go of like 25,000 people.
Really? I haven't
Yeah.
even heard that.
Yeah. It's not out there. I heard, cause I have some friends who are at Dell and they were like, but
Wow.
it's mostly people in the sales and service part of it. Cause I think a lot of it's going, so I think it's more lower paying jobs. It's not like
Mhm.
but I think a lot of that is they're investing in AI. And
AI to
so
do
like,
those. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of mundane things that these people were doing that I think AI does. And this is a tech company. So, you're going to see stuff like that where a lot of these low level people, they're probably making 50 or something a year. All that's being replaced. I mean, you see that McDonald's is trying to do stuff like that with like
Yeah.
automated, robots replacing it.
Making pretty much
Yeah.
making the entire
The whole thing.
the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the point is that this is an example of planning and organizing your life. And by thinking about how happy you are with your income and what your number is, what is your magic number and why is that your number? That's the whole point here. What's
Yeah.
your number and why
Yeah.
is that your number? And most
Mhm.
Americans seem unsatisfied. Well, I guess it's half and half. Most are satisfied, at least according to this survey.
Right.
So half are satisfied, half are not. Now, of course, this is probably not surveying poor people. This is probably not surveying people who make $25,000 with 4 kids. This
Right.
is probably only looking at a certain type of person who makes $125,000 a year, or close to that, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's not.
Around that.
So I
Yeah.
don't like it when it says like Americans, because it's hard to say are that 58% of Americans are really satisfied, because I don't think they're really going into
No.
inner
If you were
cities.
to actually, if you were to actually collect the collective opinions of all Americans, it's obviously going to be very different.
Yeah. But I
But
think
it's
this
really
is,
just your number. Like it's your number. I like
That's
that you
the
said that.
question.
It's what is your number and why is it your number? Is it just because it's 6 figures? Is it just because you value a high salary? Is it because it gives you life flexibility? Or is it because you've mentally attained a level of success, right, at that
Mhm.
number? There's a lot of different reasons. None of them are wrong, but it's a really good exercise to go through, because then, just like we do in financial planning, we stress test those situations, just like Kirk did with me. Like, okay, so if that's your number and it goes away, what do you do?
Yeah. See, I learned from you after 2.5 years.
Aha.
That's something you do all the time for sure. Yeah. And I think this article kind of talks about the 125 number. And then something we'll talk, it says like part of what that does is those it makes you feel valued. So that's the piece that we haven't really discussed as much, is the feeling of being valued, and that money can be that.
Right.
And I think that's true, and just something that is, you have to be cautious with, right? So again, in future shows, I hope we will talk a little bit more about the psychology of money, the meaning of money, and things of that nature. But on this first show, I thought it would be good, for us to discuss this idea of what is your number, to just get things thinking, right? Get your mind thinking, because it's a hard question and people don't often focus on it.
Yeah. I love it.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening to the Money Series. This is just one of our shows we have on the Jake of All Trades channel on YouTube. So please look us up, and we'll see you next time.